Hey, I'm Benjamin Lee Eaves. I'm distiller with Kentucky Artisan Distillery. Kind of a long journey, really. Probably knocking on about 18 years ago, I think. Went with a friend. I was living in South Carolina at the time, and a friend of mine wanted to drive up to just outside of Nashville to do a little exploring. His great great grandfather or great somewhere along those lines had fought in the Civil War, had died in the battle up there, buried, and so we went up to find the cemetery, explore the battleground, etc. And driving back, we saw the billboards for Tour Jack Daniel's Distillery, and hey, that sounds fun. Let's go do it. So we pulled off the road, found Jack Daniel's, went and did the tour, and it was just the whole, from walking onto that campus, going through the tour, just seeing the processes that they do, it was completely captivating for me. And especially remember walking through one of the rick houses and just the smell of the angel share in that rick house, and just like, wow, this is amazing. And I walked away from that and got home and immediately was like, I'm getting into whiskey. This is something, I've been into wines for a long time, been kind of a big wine connoisseur, but this was like, okay, I'm stepping into just like, I really want to explore good whiskey. And started down the Scotch Avenue, got into bourbon. I just wanted to taste and explore it all. And so that led to a journey of the next several years of just sampling and trying and collecting and buying, and just getting into it and learning how to break down and evaluate those spirits. And eventually it got around to this whole concept of like, I've discovered those whole little mini barrels, and like, well, what can I do with these? What could I accent these? Take a bottom shelf bourbon, can I accent it with something? Can I add a little extra aging to it or a little extra oak to it? Just discovering that. And so through that process, I started learning about barrels and maturation in barrels and what goes on. And I probably researched this for like 6 months before I even bought my first little mini barrel to try, and did a couple experiments with those. They turned out really well, and just kind of honed in on that concept. And then it was like, well, the next step is, okay, this is kind of cool, doing a little mini aging or just some finishing, like putting sherry in, dumping it, and then adding some scotch or something like that. And it's like, well, what's the next step? Making my own. And in that whole process and during that time, I had joined My Whiskey Den as part of a reviewer and our YouTube show. And we were meeting lots of great distillers, and all our interviews and discussions with them, the more they talked, just the more I got intrigued, and just the passion just felt like it just kept rising. And so part of that, I think, is innate for me. Perfect. But part of that, I think, is innate for me is like, I had a passion for cooking. So, and I grew up gardening with my grandparents. You always had big summer gardens and winter gardens and winter greens and things like that. And so that process of not just cooking, but growing your own food. And so it's the same thing. Any kind of hobby I get into, I try to always take it to as far as I can go. Shooting sports is a big hobby of mine, and it's not good enough to just go shoot. I've got to customize and build my own guns. And I'd love to even take that even further than where I've gone. But so it was kind of that same process. You start down that road, and eventually you're going to end up with distilling. But the more I talked with these distillers, the more I just became intrigued with it. And finally, just like, the hell with it. How do you get in this industry? How do you learn? Either you're brought in and you're go through like an apprenticeship, basically. Maybe you get a degree, chemical engineering or something like that, or you just learn at home. And so I bought my first still and just started from there. And from the first time I ran it, it was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I was exploring whiskey basically on my own Had a couple of friends that I knew that were kind of into it. We'd share some things, but I had no idea in the midst of this huge whiskey boom that had happened over the last 10 years plus that there was this massive community of people that were just sharing this. I mean, YouTube, for me, that was where I went to learn how to fix my car or, work on a gun project or do something like that. I wasn't a regular YouTube watcher. I didn't subscribe to channels or anything like that. Just social media, share a few things on Facebook, but I had no idea there was this huge whiskey community. And a friend of mine around Christmas time a few years ago said, "Hey, have you ever checked out the Whiskey Tribe and the Whiskey Vault?" Never heard of it. You should watch those videos. I think you would really like that. So went on YouTube and I spent a month kind of deep diving the Whiskey Vault and those guys out in Austin, Texas, and what they were doing through the Wizard Academy. And then they had their second channel, the Whiskey Tribe, and that was very entertaining and just very fun. And I was learning more and just really enjoying that. And it was all of a sudden it hit me about a month in. I wonder if they got some social media there. Are they on Facebook or something? And so I went to Facebook, found it, joined it, and it was all over from there. Started meeting people, becoming friends with people, and through that process discovered some other whiskey YouTubers, and we were just randomly through that group and then through some of these whiskey YouTube shows, through some of these whiskey YouTube shows, there were some people I got to connect with. Mike Lissick being one. We started sending some samples back and forth to each other, and we would find each other in chats and chat groups on some of these shows, and we'd talk back and forth, and so kind of started to build a friendship there. Patrick was another one the same way, and through a show we enjoyed watching called The Rock Gut Review, I realized Patrick had a show, and so I went over to his YouTube channel, started watching a few of his things, and then it wasn't long, I got an invitation, "Hey, would you like to come on? I'll send you some samples. You can review them, and we'll have a conversation about it." And so I came on with him, and Mike, same way. Patrick had invited him on the show, and after we did a few together, it was like, let's do this. Why don't y'all come? Patrick invited us to join him permanently, and we just took off from there. And it was pretty quickly we developed this concept of we wanted to focus on American craft whiskey, not necessarily the big guys, the heritage brands, or Scotch, which, I mean, we will dig into all of that from time to time, but we really wanted to focus on craft spirits because you have this huge craft revival going on, and so much of the attention is on Elijah Craig and Jack Daniels and Buffalo Trace and the BTAC and all of that, and it seemed like so few people were really discussing this huge craft boom that was going on, and so we kind of wanted to make that our niche. And then that very quickly morphed into our evening with our Monday night live show. We would invite distillers and industry people on to discuss their distillery, their passions, what they were doing, and that just kind of caught fire and took off. And for me, that's where I got a lot of inspiration, a lot of motivation, and met some wonderful people that really helped me get to where I am now. So,
listen, you know who lives forever? Assholes, Jolie. Assholes live forever.
Early on, I had a career that I wanted to go down, a career path I wanted to go down. Some things happened and I made decisions and didn't go down that path, and hit a point later in life, just honestly despising the job I was at, the career I'd been in, 17 years at a company, and just woke up every morning hating the fact that this is where I had to go, this is what I had to do. It had no meaning for me, no purpose. And also the reality that what my true dream, what I'd wanted to pursue, that was no longer an avenue or an option. Could not do that. And so as this started, and I felt for a number of years kind of trapped and just like, what kind of changes do I make? How can I make a change? What would I even go do? And over the last few years, as this really started to come up, it just like, this is my passion right now, and this is my heart, this is where I want to be in. And I think what absolutely sold it was over a year and a half ago, just about, I came to Kentucky for the first time. And this was literally, the fun thing about our show was, with My Whiskey Den, it was 3 guys. We're in 3 different states, Wisconsin, Missouri, and South Carolina. We've been doing this show for like a year and a half, and none of us had ever met in person. And so finally we agreed on we're coming to Kentucky, and we're going to meet some of our friends here we've met through the show and spend a few days. And we spent a day up with Alan Bishop and at his home and getting to tour some historical sites, and just some amazing friendships formed over that weekend. But it was coming here that weekend, for me, it almost felt like coming home. Like there was something inside of me going, this is where you've always belonged. And I made the decision right there, okay, whatever I got to do, this is the industry I'm getting in, this is where I'm coming to, and this is where I want to be. And just immediately going home, started coming up with plans and putting things into action to try to get to where I'm at. So there were a couple of distilleries that I personally knew of that I really wanted to be at, if the opportunity was there. And in those top two, Kentucky Artisan was one. And it was primarily because I knew Jade's reputation as a head distiller. I also knew what Kentucky Artisan did in the contract distilling, and I felt like that would give me a tremendous opportunity to work with multiple different recipes and mash bills, and to kind of see this industry from a unique perspective. It's different from your typical small craft distillery, but it's also not your big industrial sized distillery where it's basically push some buttons, pull some levers. This is a very hands-on. We're getting to do some crafty stuff with some of the mash bills we're doing, but we're also, a lot of our processes is on an industrial scale. Like I go talk with my friend John at Peerless, and discussing their single barrel program. And so, oh yeah, we might dump 4 single barrels in a day and do that for a week. And I'm like, we're dumping 14 in a day. So we're doing certain things, but we're doing it on a scale that a lot of other craft distilleries are not. And so that was one of the things that drove me to want to be there. Was I understood this place was unique, and I think what you could learn while you're there would be immeasurable. And it's honestly, it's blown my expectations away as far as all that's concerned. The first opportunity I had to get in, I had a couple of other interviews with places that just didn't pan out. Either the money wasn't right, or the opportunity just wasn't the right thing. But Jade let me know that there was a position open on the bottling line, and said this would be a great place to get your foot in the door and start. And he told me, as a matter of fact, this is where I started. He started on the bottling line, and now he's the head distiller there. And so I applied, quickly got an interview, drove up here for a few days, did the interview, spent some time with Alan and a few other friends here over the weekend. And by Monday, I was driving home and got the call on the way that they were offering me the position. So it didn't take me a quick second to accept it and start making plans to move and come up here. So started out that week. I started week of Thanksgiving, started on the bottling line. It was, I'll say, a baptism by fire, because I'd been an operations manager for the last 17 years with a small family business. And so there were a lot of things I could relate to in what they were doing, but at the same time, this was all new for me. And but they were immediately some of the best people I've ever worked with. The people on the bottling line were very gracious, very good teachers, very patient, and at the same time, very encouraging. And everyone kind of knew I'm wanting to get into distilling, but we're glad to have you here, as long as you want to be in this position. So very quickly learned Jade would come back and we'd have some conversations, and he might bring something back for me to sample or try and kind of give an evaluation on. And I was expecting 6 months to a year I would be on bottling, and then opportunity might come up to move up to the distillery. And actually within literally 3 months that position came open. I was able to apply and got the job. And so by the end of February, I was moving over to the distillery side of things. The reality is, it's hard. It's really hard. It's physically demanding. It can be mentally very challenging. I mean, I'm usually filthy by the time I come home. I've been bathed in spirits. I've been bathed in mash. I've had grease up to my elbows. There's there's a lot of stuff about it that's extremely difficult, and there's a lot of days I've come home and all I want to do is crack a beer and go to bed. I'm done. I'm wiped out, you know. But you get up the next morning and I'm excited to get back to work because I just love doing what I'm doing. And some of that has evolved for me, like what I get excited about or what really makes me happiest with it, as some of the things I'm learning and the concepts I'm learning as the puzzles all start to the puzzle pieces start to come together for it all. There's things that 2 months ago got me really excited or happy that now it's something different. And what I love right now, the fermentations to me are my babies. I love taking care of those, watching those through their maturation process until they're completed out, monitoring and getting those over to the still and seeing how that starts to come off the still, how that spirit translates. That part is something I love, but I think for the biggest part for me is the team that I work with, these guys. Any way I can support them, help their job be easier, and the way we all work together. I love being part of that team. Jade is just a masterful guy as head distiller, and he's a tremendous leader. Worked a lot of jobs over my lifespan, and quite honestly, I've never met anybody with the leadership skills that he has. And to do it in this industry the way he does it is tremendous. Another part that really makes me excited or happy about this job is the fact that when you're a distiller, it pulls in, there's so many different aspects, skill sets that it brings together. You've got to be an electrician, you got to be a plumber, you got to be a mechanic, you have to be an engineer, you have to be a little bit of a scientist, you know, you got to understand your biology and biochemistry, and there's everything from just practical skill sets. I've ran new cooling lines, I've repaired pumps, I've just run the gamut from sweeping floors to we just got through blending and profiling a 50-year-old bourbon with some 5-year-old stuff. So there's just this whole massive gamut that it feels like it brings my whole life set of everything I've learned over my life gets to come into play into one place. And that for me brings a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction. No, it was actually very difficult. And part of that was during that process, my now ex-wife, we went through a separation and divorce. And that for me, the hardest part is not seeing my kids as often as I would like to. So that part was challenging, but just getting into the industry from the outside was difficult. You're at an age, I think I'm now 46 years old, where, yeah, you still got a lot of career left, but at the same time, a lot of these places, they're looking for somebody younger, I think. I think age is a factor. I felt like there's some relative career experience that translated to. I think there's some managerial skills and things that I've learned and what I've done that, as well as logistics that apply. But everybody's looking for, they want you to have 6 months to a year of spirits industry experience or more. And so not having that experience and just give me a chance to prove myself. I know I can do this. And so having that opportunity, that was the hardest part. That was the most frustrating part, just trying to get in. I grew up, my family, my dad was a preacher. We moved around a lot. So like making that transition here, that part was easy because I've done it my whole life. Just getting into the flow in a new location. I've kind of been the place, and my home is wherever I lay my head kind of thing. But Kentucky, at the same time, Kentucky felt special compared to any place I've been. I mean, I would love to get my skill level up to a place where I feel like I can manage being a head distiller somewhere. I would love to be at a small to medium-sized craft distillery. At least that's kind of the dream right now. Get back to running a pot still. The column still is cool, and I have really learned and enjoy getting to learn that. Just learning how to manage that, and still learning a ton. I mean, I feel like I can do well right now, but good grief, there's so much more to that I still don't have all the concepts down for yet. But I do love running a pot still. There's something, I don't know if it's historical aspect of it, but there's something beautiful about that. I love pot still spirit. I love the heaviness. I love the oiliness. I love sometimes the impurities that come through on that, just how dirty it can be, because I love funky flavors. And so that for me is something I like. But as far as end goals, I mean, the overall, just to, that in itself, being a head distiller somewhere, that's a goal. But knowing that you've kind of left a tiny little mark on this industry that's been around for a long time, I'm sure there's distillers that we know by name that are very famous, they're very popular, but there's untold thousands that have come and gone that nobody knows their name, nobody knows who they are. They're the ones on the ground floor doing all the work. But they've left their mark in some way. I mean, that spirit, you put that stuff in a barrel and it gets bottled. And like I said, we were dealing with a 50-year-old bourbon this week, and to sit there and look at that spirit and think about what all has transpired over the last 50 years in history while you've sat in a barrel, or whose blood, sweat, and tears went into this. Somebody had to cook that mash, somebody had to manage that ferment, somebody ran that still, physically put that into a barrel. Who was that person? So it's just kind of, what little mark do I get to leave? What little thumbprint do I get to add to this massive industry that goes on here? That to me is kind of cool. And if there's some way, not to reinvent the wheel in any way, but if there's some way, I think for me it's, because I'm a big history buff and passionate about that, like my friend Alan is, and if there's some way I can weave in some history in distilling and bring that into the now and kind of pull that together, maybe it sounds like some kind of mystical thing, and maybe it is, but just in whatever process I do over the next 20, 30 years, where I end up, if there's some way I can bring that together a little bit. I don't have any specific definition of what that's going to look like, but that's kind of a concept that I have in my mind, and that's what I would like to do. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what a distiller is, what we do, especially on the enthusiast side, because social media is its thing, marketing is its thing, and we've all seen the pictures of the master distiller sitting in the warehouse, tapping the barrels, swirling the glass in the air, and there's almost this concept of like, that's all he does all day. We're tasting spirits, we're blending, we're writing mash bills all the time. It's like, that's the farthest thing from the freaking truth. It's really hard work. So for those who maybe they see this, they've had an interest in getting into distilling, it's a path that they would like to explore or go down, I have a little bit of advice for you. Number one, learn to play chess and learn to play it well, because the reality is distilling is a big chess game. You're constantly having to think 4, 5, 6, 7 moves ahead, and you need to be able to multitask and manage multiple things going on the board at one time. And that's kind of like a chess game. And so learn that kind of thinking skill, because it's going to pay dividends for you. If you're a one-track mind and you can only tackle one project at a time, this may not be the profession for you, because I may have a fermentation that's ready to send to the beer well. At the same time, I'm cutting down some distillate to get ready to bottle or to go into barrel. I'm dumping barrels that may go to a bottling project. I've got another spirit that maybe needs cutting as well in a different tank. This hose just burst over here, so now I've got to run over and repair that. This pump shut down. Why did that pump shut down? Now we got to get that back going. The proof on the still is going up. I may need to go make a correction on the still real quick. All this is going on all at the same time. And then when that's all done, what's the next 3, 4, 5 things I need to get ready for? What do I need to have set up for tomorrow? Okay, tomorrow we're doing 3 cooks. Do I have enough fermenters clear? for those 3 cooks. Which fermenters do I need to load up to the beer well that are complete, so that opens that space for those cooks? So there's just all this constant chess game going on. And to me, that's been one of the most important skills I think anybody can have coming into this. Learn your mechanical skills, learn your plumbing skills, learn your electrical, because as much as we want to talk about like concepts and blending, and we want to talk about, different types of mash bills and things like how to write a mash bill, that's all good. But until you become a head distiller, really, that's not even practical. How do you run that still? How do you fix that pump? How do you, hook up these hoses and do this, and understanding thermodynamics and understanding that back pressure is a thing, and you better check your valves and walk your lines. Those kind of basic mechanical concepts, get those down really well, because that's what's going to help you advance and grow in this job more than learning how to write a mash bill at this moment. That will come into play later on, and that's important to understand. And those concepts about spirits are important to know. But from a practical side, it's, learning, hey man, do you even know how to work a wrench? Just basic stuff like that. Get that skill set down, because that's what you're going to need. And that's what's more important, especially as you're getting into this industry.